So here we are for the second video of the course, where we're going to look today at how to begin. But just before we get there, we're going to zoom out for a minute and check into purpose. What's the point? Why does it matter? What difference can it make? A key part of coaching is really helping our clients to get back into the driving seat of their lives and to stay in the driving seat of their lives. And that image of sitting in the driving seat is one that's helpful throughout every coaching conversation. Are they in the driving seat? Are they owning where they're trying to get to? And I don't know if you can remember passing your driving test, but there's that feeling when you get given the keys to the car, when you're actually in the seat with your hands on the steering wheel, you're in control. That's exhilarating, it's energizing, it's exciting. It's different to being a passenger, being passive, waiting to see where you're taken and where you end up. You're actually actively involved. It's your feet on the pedals, it's your responsiveness. You're able to exert your will and your influence. You're able to slow down and notice when there's a problem. And that's really the feeling that we want our coachees to have in the coaching conversation, that in their whole life that they're taking some time to get back into the driving seat, to really re-clarify where they're trying to go, how they're going to get there. We're going to use this keys model, CEES. We're asking clients again, what do you want? When we're working with what people want, then we're working with intrinsic motivation. We're working with what really matters most to them. And that's going to drive much more productive, effective, engaged behaviours. We're then going to try and energise with a compelling vision of the ideal future. We're asking what's compelling about what they want. We then move into that encourage part of the conversation, where we're trying to help the thinker to find fresh ways to move forward. What will it take? We've thought, what do you want? What's so compelling about it? What's it going to take to get there? Lastly, we're going to think about stretch, to take action that grows their potential and focuses them for impact. What will you give to make this happen? In this session specifically, we're going to try and cover off three objectives. Explain what coaching is and what it's not, and can describe the process to the client and relevant stakeholders. Partner with clients to identify or reconfirm what they want to accomplish in the session. And then lastly, maintains the distinctions between coaching, consulting and psychotherapy and other support professions. In coaching, we call this initial part of kind of clarifying expectations, purpose and process, we call it contracting, which is where it's not about legal or it's not about signing necessarily, but it's about ensuring aligned expectations so that we can work together in partnership effectively. And part of that is actually explaining what coaching is. And for lots of people, they'll have had lots of experiences where they've sat maybe one-to-one with somebody before, whether it's a manager, a doctor, a friend, a therapist. There are all sorts of other past experiences that they'll be bringing into this conversation that may shape their expectations. And we need to distinguish between those other conversation settings and what we are about in this conversation. Differentiating coaching from other helping professions can be really useful. And the first one that is helpful to distinguish with is consulting. So consultants are often brought into businesses, and here we are talking in a business context, but consultants are brought in to diagnose and prescribe, which is a bit like a doctor, right? So they come in, they're experts in a particular sphere, and they're brought in to use that expertise to better understand the problem and then to say how you're going to solve that problem, to prescribe solutions. Therapists often look backwards to help clients better understand how problems or a pain point has been caused by the past. Mentors are often approached by a mentee, somebody who wants help and support, but they often have a kind of expertise in a particular area, and they've gone before or gone ahead, gone further than the mentee has. So you're often going to somebody who's got more experience to help you follow in their footsteps or get ahead in a particular area based on what they've learned. Coaches create the conditions for learning, so that's a key thing. How do we create the conditions for our clients to learn? We listen and ask questions to help raise their awareness, and we help clients to find their own best way forwards. And that's really underpinned by this idea that the level of ownership equals the likelihood of success. That the more that they generate their own solutions and aims, the more committed they are to actually following through and achieving those goals. Whereas if there are targets that are set upon them by somebody else, their ownership is lower, and how much they are going to access their inner creativity and resourcefulness to achieve those goals is going to be far lower. Another useful way of explaining what coaching is and isn't is what we call the push-pull continuum, which is to contrast a push approach with a pull approach. A push is trying to get somebody to change, and a pull approach is trying to draw out of them their own desire for change. So with push, you can have instructing, giving advice, giving informative stories. They're all trying to make them want to change. And then towards the pull end of the continuum, you've got, they get sort of more and more non-directive as we go. So giving some feedback, which is what I notice, and helping them notice and raise awareness of what they're doing. Maybe making suggestions, which is putting things down as an offering for them to take from the plate rather than saying that you should, or I think this is the right way. Then powerful questions, which again may be leading their attention, but is actually getting them to wake up their own ideas rather than trying to put ideas in. Summarising, paraphrasing and reflecting, which is all part of really giving back to somebody what they've said in a way that helps them to see it in a new or a different way. And then lastly, listening to understand, which is right at the end of that sort of non-directive approach. And we can really underestimate how powerful listening is as a gift and as a tool for helping others learn. I don't know whether you've experienced that sometimes if you're with somebody who you think isn't really that interested in what you're saying, or they're distracted, or they disagree with you, it can actually muddle your thinking and shut down your thinking. Whereas the moment that you come into a space where you think somebody's really present, attentive, interested, curious, open to hearing what you think, you find that you can think much clearer. And a very famous coach called Nancy Klein sort of summed that up by saying that the quality of our attention actually determines the quality of other people's thinking. So one of the key things we're wanting to do as coaches is to bring that presence of attention to our clients that actually helps them think better, which is what transforms their results. How are we actually going to begin? How are we going to start this conversation? How are we going to tick off and ensure that we've done this contracting process? I do that most often by asking the question, what do you hope to get from this conversation? It gives it some focus, it gives it some intentionality, it helps people realise that we're aiming to get something from this time. Added to that, I usually go on to ask some version of a question like, how will we know when we've got there? How will we know at the end of this conversation if we've been successful? What would you like to be different by the end of this conversation? Or something like that, to give it a bit of a metric and to actually hold ourselves as a coaching partnership accountable to doing that work. And another phrase that you'll probably hear me say a number of times in relation to this is that the stronger the contract is, the better the work that we are able to do together. And part of that is because having a clear contract of what we're trying to do together and how we're going to go about it actually helps us be more flexible in the rest of the conversation and keep the client in the driver's seat, because we can come back to it over and over through the conversation. Perhaps different insights surface during the conversation, where the client realizes that what they thought was the aim of the conversation isn't actually what matters most to them at this moment. And if you've got a clear contract, it gives you something to refer back to, actually to update and refresh. And we call that process recontracting. So it makes sure that you're staying in your purpose and your process by saying things like, where are we now? Is that still what's most important? Or where do we need to go next? Or just even reminding somebody, like reflecting back. So we said what we wanted to get out of this conversation was X. Is that still where we are? So hopefully in this video we have covered how you're going to explain what coaching is and isn't, and describe the process to the client and to relevant stakeholders, how you're going to partner with clients to identify or reconfirm what they want to accomplish in the conversation, and we've covered how to stay in your coaching lane through the recontracting process.